I am 82 years old, and I have buried most of the certainties I carried into my 40s, but a few things I am surer of now than I have ever been. I spent 50 years as the only doctor for one small town of about 900 people, and in all that driving over bad roads at all hours, sitting in that creaking brown chair while people heard the worst news of their lives, I learned something no medical book taught me. After a long life, only a handful of things really decide whether your later years hold any dignity, any comfort, any peace at all. Not many, just a few. And I have watched, up close, who ended up settled at the end, and who ended up bitter and afraid. So this is not from an expert or a study. This is one old man telling you the 5 things I believe you must have after 60. Sit with me a minute. The first one is your health. Now, I do not mean the body of a young person. That chapter is closed for all of us, and no honest doctor will tell you different. I mean enough health to stay independent, enough to get yourself out of bed without a hand under your arm. Enough to walk your own day, to wash and feed yourself, to sit at your own table, to enjoy the people and the small things you love. When you are young, you spend health like it is water from a well that never runs dry. Then age comes around, quiet and patient, and collects what it is owed. A knee that talks back on the stairs. A back that stiffens in the cold. A cut that takes 3 weeks to close instead of 3 days. Nobody warns you about the slow arrival of that bill. Years back, I knew a man named Byron Prine. Byron had more than I ever will. Land in 3 directions, money working for him in places I never understood, a house you could get lost in. And by the end, his body had simply quit on him. He could barely cross a room. I remember him sitting there, a wealthy man in every way the world counts, and he looked at me and said, plain as anything, that he would trade half of everything he owned just to feel comfortable in his own body again for one ordinary morning. He meant it. And I have thought about Byron more times than I can count, because here is the trade so many of us make without noticing. We spend our young years trading our health to get wealth. We sit too long. We sleep too little. We tell ourselves we will rest and mend it all later when there is time. And then we spend our old years trading that wealth right back, trying to buy our health again at any price. It is a poor bargain, and the exchange rate is cruel. Nobody comes out ahead on it. After 60, every morning you wake up able to move on your own 2 legs is not a small thing. It is a gift, handed to you fresh at the door, and most people step right over it without so much as a glance. The most contented old folks I ever sat with in all those years were rarely the richest. They were just healthy enough to enjoy an ordinary day, a walk to the mailbox, a meal they could taste. Remember that. The second thing you must have is enough money. Not a fortune, not luxury, just enough. And I want to be careful here, because the trouble with money is that for the people chasing more of it, the target never stops moving. Peace always sits just past the next number, and then you reach that number, and peace has moved again, one field over, and it never once lets you catch it. I have seen people retire on very little and live at real peace. And I have seen people, with more than they could spend in 3 lifetimes, lie awake terrified of losing it. The difference was never the size of the account. It was their relationship with the money. After 60, money stops being about status and starts being about security and choices. A doctor's bill you did not expect. A roof that gives out in a bad winter. a furnace that quits on the coldest night of the year. With a little put by, those things are only an inconvenience, a hard few days, and then behind you. Without it, that very same trouble turns into a disaster that swallows your sleep and follows you around the house for months. The ones I watched suffer least were not the wealthy ones. They were the prepared ones. They had enough, and they knew they had enough, and that knowing was the whole of it. Financial peace beats financial status every day of the week. One gives you comfort in your own kitchen. The other only impresses strangers who are not thinking about you anyway. True wealth, near as I can tell, is measured by how much worry is absent from your mind. The third thing is a few sincere people. Not many, not a big crowd, a few who are real. Some folks, you will notice, are only present when your life is easy. The weather turns hard, and they are simply gone, like they were never standing there at all. And I will tell you something that surprised me late. A room full of people can be one of the loneliest places on earth, if not one of them truly sees you. I will be honest with you here, because I do not want this to sound like a lecture from a man who has it all figured out. For a good stretch of my life, I mistook being busy for being close. I knew everybody in that county. Everybody knew me. I held half the barns in that town. And when a genuinely hard season came for me, most of those voices just faded off, polite and distant. And the quiet that was left taught me a lesson I had somehow missed for decades. Being present is not the same as being loyal. I still wrestle with that one, if I am honest. Even now, I catch myself counting how many people know my name, when the only number that ever mattered was the one or two I could call at 2 in the morning without rehearsing what to say. That is what you need after 60, not a network, emotional safety. One or two people who do not judge your silence and do not disappear when your life gets inconvenient for them. You build that slowly, over years, and you cannot buy it or rush it. One sincere person will make your old age lighter than 100 shallow acquaintances ever could. Because the loneliness that finds you late in life is not being alone in a room. It is feeling unseen while surrounded by people. The fourth thing you must have is inner peace, and I want to be clear that I do not mean distraction. I do not mean the television murmuring so the house is not silent, or the busy work that fills the hours and leaves you exactly where it found you. I mean a deeper kind of peace, the kind that holds even when your life is far from perfect. Because I will tell you where an enormous amount of our energy goes as we age. It goes into carrying old regrets, the mistakes, the words we wish we had said gentler, or said at all, or never said in the first place. Here is the plain truth I had to learn slow. The past does not change 1 inch because we keep walking back into it. And the future does not improve 1 day because we lie there worrying about it. Peace begins the moment you stop arguing with what cannot be changed. It grows when you forgive people, and I mean the real forgiving, not because they earned it or deserve it, but because you are simply tired of carrying the resentment around, and it was only ever heavy for you anyway. And it settles in for good when you finally accept that life is imperfect by its very nature, and always was, and was never going to be otherwise. The people I watched grow old with real grace were not the ones who dodged hardship. Nobody dodges it. They were the ones who stopped letting old hardship run today. There is a quiet kind of freedom in setting a thing down. I wish I had learned it at 50 instead of 70. The fifth thing, and do not let its plainness fool you, is the right to still shape your own life, your say. The ability to make your own decisions, to choose how you spend your hours, to keep some sense of your own direction. After 60, a great many people hand this over without ever noticing they did it. They start living entirely by routine, or by what other people expect of them, or by what is simply most convenient for everyone else. Sometimes health takes it. Sometimes family means well and takes it anyway. Sometimes it is just habit wearing a groove. I have sat with old people who were fine in their bodies, steady with their money, surrounded by folks who loved them and who still felt like they were disappearing, because everything had quietly been decided for them. Even their small preferences got traded away for somebody else's convenience, one at a time, until the person underneath was hard to find. And it does not have to be some grand show of independence. It is small. Choosing your own morning. Taking the walk instead of staying in the chair. What you read. When you rest. Who you spend an afternoon with, and who you quietly choose to avoid. Those little choices are how you hold on to your dignity and your own self. The sense that you are still the one writing your days. When that stays intact, growing old feels like a story continuing. When it goes, it feels like disappearing while you are still in the room. So there they are, your health, enough money, a few sincere people, inner peace, and the right to still shape your own life. I am an old man in a quiet house, with the table still set for more than two, out of a habit my wife and I made long ago. And I do not have this all mastered. I told you already, I still catch myself failing at the third one. But I am sure of this much. These 5 are not luxuries. They are foundations. And when even one of them goes missing, life after 60 gets noticeably harder to carry. Tend them while you can. If you found some worth in sitting here with me, there are more of these talks, and I would be glad of your company for another one. Subscribe if you would like to hear it, or if that is more than you care to do, just leave a like so I know somebody was listening. Take care of yourself. I will see you next time.